In a world where magical monsters and anomalies threaten humanity's survival, Awakeners, also known as awakened humans with unique gear, have always been humanity's last hope against the deadly monsters. While many of these Awakeners are equipped with impressive battle IQ, unique gear, and prowess, there exists one particular loser named Touya, who doesn't seem to have any awakened gear, despite being an Awakener, and is usually referred to as being weaponless and incompetent. One time, during a Mana Stone collection mission, Touya's team is attacked and killed by a magical monster, leaving him as the sole survivor of the entire ordeal. Along the line, Touya gets bequeathed the cursed awakened gear, which gives him ultimate power that enables him to slash and cut his way to the top of the infamous monster tower. Before we get to the beginning of Touya's journey to the top of the tower, the narrator explains the Awakener concept to the viewers, not forgetting to mention exactly what an Awakener's unique gear means to the Awakener themselves, as well as how important each weapon is as a symbol of strength to the wielder. While many Awakeners use their unique gear to gain fame, some take different paths and use their gear for more mundane and altruistic reasons. With all that said, the narration pauses, and a typical life-threatening battle between an Awakener and his partner from the future is depicted, fighting an impossible level magical monster with little to no chance of defeating it. After fighting the monster for a few hours on end, one of the Awakener's magic barriers is destroyed. With this, the defense Awakener's partner, who tends to have a more Slayer-style unique gear, tries attacking the monster with his special attack technique, Chain Blade, but when the impossible level monster easily deflects his attacks, the Slayer yet another special attack technique he calls the Gigant Crash. This time around, the monster absorbs his entire magic attack, and this sends the Slayer into deep despair as the reality of his situation hits him like a bus. The moment the Slayer realizes that he's already absorbed too much of his partner's reserve aura, the monster lets out a huge, angry roar that makes both fighters nearly piss their pants in fear of dying. Moments before their demise, however, one of the Awakeners admits to the monster being much stronger than they imagined. But as for the Slayer, he finds it hard to believe that an Awakener with awakened gear still couldn't defeat the infamous monster to rise to the top. Eventually, as he slowly accepts defeat, the Slayer finally realizes that the rumors about Takumi and Touya being the ruler of all weapons are true all along. Mind you, this battle happens sometime in the distant future, years after Touya acquired his cursed gear and became the strongest warrior in the land. So, before the big fight happened, however, Touya's humble beginnings all began from his very belief that he could achieve anything as long as he worked hard for it. Upon spending years fighting for a dream that he knows will be quite difficult to achieve, Touya finally made it to the famous Awakener facility to try to get a crest that'll grant him his unique gear. At the time, Touya was crestless, and everybody knew this, so, during his wait, he overhears a bunch of nobodies trash-talking him for being weaponless and useless to the cause, knowing fully well that Touya was listening to their every word. One of the bozos even went as far as telling his partner how he'd have quit trying to be an Awakener if he were in Touya's shoes. As one of the idiots mentions something about Touya picking mana stones, the narrator continues to explain how the infamous Tower of Monsters is known to be the place where mana stones, which are known to be a clean source of energy, emerge. Currently, all existing energy sources are depleted, so this makes mana stones extremely valuable in the land, given that it's a very clean energy source. Because of this, becoming an Awakener is considered winning in life, since only Awakeners are qualified enough to pick these valuable energy sources. After yet another hour of waiting, Touya finally gets his chance to pray to the altar so he can, hopefully, get a crest and become a bona fide Awakener. As soon as he gets his 1-minute chance to begin his prayer to the altar, Touya dramatically slams his head to the floor, taking a bowing posture, and starts begging whichever deity lives there to grant him a strong crest. Having heard Touya's bold request, the female instructor gets very pissed at the brainless fool for asking more than his abilities can carry. Since Touya is the very first F-rank Awakener in history, also admitted as a non-combatant Awakener, she didn't expect him to be this ambitious towards achieving his goal. To provide some context, the instructor reveals all the criteria one needs to be ranked as an adventurer, most of which include personal crest, awakened gear, and the like. Naturally, every beginner-level Awakener would awaken an aura that would grant them a second physical enhancement, which can be trained to be stronger. As for the personal crest, which allows the Awakeners to summon their awakened gear, the instructor states that that part can't be changed, which is why Touya can never be an Awakener. With all that said, the timer hits the 1-minute mark, and the instructor dismisses Touya, so the others can also try their luck to become Awakeners. On his way home, Touya takes time to remember his childhood dream to become a legendary swordsman who uses all types of awakened gear. Although the infamous nameless magic swordsman is a myth believed to only exist in children's storybooks, Touya always thought of the invincible, evil Awakener who stood on top of all Awakeners and was defeated by the heroes as an amazing role model, even if his methods were dirty and evil. The fact that he challenged all the heroes alone and mastered all the awakened gears made young Touya adore explore his strength and aspire to grow up to become a warrior like the evil swordsman. Not too long after, Touya gets back home and returns to practicing his swings just so he can be ready whenever his awakened gear materializes. Moments later, during his practice session, poor Touya pauses for a moment to recall all the depressing things he heard from the idiot's earlier things about him being talentless and a pathetic deadweight awakener. Although these words are enough to make even the most courageous man second-guess his life decisions, Touya ignores them and decides to keep on practicing so he can hopefully become an awakener one day. For some context, it's revealed that the awakener class is divided into 3 based on importance and risk. For the first class, which is the strike team, they focus on conquering and scouting the tower. As for the second, aka the trade team, they focus on trade deals with various countries. Lastly, the third and most underrated class, which consists of the mining team, is more concerned with getting the mana stones. Despite knowing all these facts about being an awakener, Touya still refuses to give up on his dream of becoming someone like the magic swordsman. If he can just get a shred of good luck at some point in his life, he believes he can be the strongest warrior to have ever lived on Earth. While he soliloquizes outside, Touya's phone suddenly rings, and he picks up, albeit startled. On the other end of the line, a rude bastard gives Touya a job offer to come help him with some undisclosed stuff. And Touya, realizing he's pretty much free to do anything, accepts the offer. Little did bro know that this job, which is seemingly laced with uncertainties, is one that'll change the course of his destiny and life forever. Nevertheless, Touya refuses to waste too much time thinking, as he just packs up his stuff and gets ready for whatever's coming. Moments after getting his arse ready for his next easy job, Touya joins a mining team on the first floor of the infamous tower to do whatever job they had to do to earn a living. Before they begin, the team leader briefs everyone on the nature of the job they're to do for the day, which is picking mana stones and dropped items left behind by the strike team on the first floor. Despite assuring his team that the nearby strong monsters had already been eliminated by the strike team, the team leader still warns everyone on his team, especially worthless people like Touya, to subjugate any monsters they find on the floor with their awakened gear, so their safety on the mission can be assured. With all that said, the team leader takes a few seconds off their official work time to rain insults on poor Touya for being a weaponless deadweight who's just an extra pair of hands nobody respects. Once he's done, making Touya feel like shit for being human, the team leader gives the order for everyone to begin searching for mana stones and drop items. As his job with the mining team begins, Touya explains the basic job description of the mining team while picking up shiny, glowing purple stones off the floor and storing them in his backpack. Over the next few seconds, Touya reveals how he makes a living by doing something boring whenever he can. Somewhere along the line, while Touya does his job quietly, he suddenly overhears 2 of his idiot colleagues nearby complaining and whining about their job being a boring and unfulfilling one. While one of the bozos advises the other idiot to be a little thankful that he gets to do this risk-free thing. The true idiot amongst the 2 wishes he could at least do something with a little bit more fun now and then. Honestly, Touya kind of agrees with the second guy, too, and it's all because he doesn't want to be stuck cleaning up after the big guys, like some puppet for the rest of his life. In any case, since all he can do with his current power level is pick, then Touya decides not to complain like the other 2. After yet another hour of picking up mana stones, Touya suddenly notices a low-level slime a few meters away, staring and growling at him with its red eyes. Despite being freaked out by the gooey, cringy monster, he takes out his spaghetti picker, which is the only weapon on him, and does his best to fend the slime monster off. When that doesn't work, the team leader, who's darn tired of having to save Touya's arse all the time, swoops in, destroys the slime monster easily, and outright insults Touya for being so powerless against something as low level as a slime monster, all after making sure he's alive to respond to his insults. Soon after saying more hurtful words towards the already shaking Touya, the team leader wraps up work for the day and urges his men to move out from the first floor before it gets dark. Moments later, before he lets Touya off the hook, the team leader orders him to go check out a small chamber nearby for any mana stones he can find. Unable to refuse his orders, Touya leaves for the small chamber, but then again, upon getting there, he stops to think about the terrible things the freaking bastard of a team leader said to him earlier. Having recalled those hurtful words, Touya begins to wish he had a strong crest and awakened gear to prove to these naysayers that he can be more than they think. Meanwhile, the other remaining workers outside the small chamber take down a few more slimes and harvest their dropped items for the team. Along the line, they start complaining about the sheer number of slimes they've had to destroy so far, and wonder if they should be worried about what's coming next for them. Not too long after that moment, a huge silhouette of a hunk of knightly armor pops out of a random opening in the cave, and, for a moment, the remaining members of the strike team mistake the dark armor to be someone from the strike team. The moment the knightly armor appears in its full form in the light, one of the bozos gets closer to it and tries to familiarize himself with it, thinking the armor is someone from the strike team. However, before the guy could blink, the armor killed him with a punch that sent him flying several meters behind the other two. Upon witnessing the horrific incident happen right before their eyes, the other two idiots scream like little girls and warn everyone around them that a boss-level monster has appeared on their floor. At that same moment, Touya hears the screams from the grown men near the small chamber he's in and gets very scared as he wonders what could have happened out there. Without thinking twice, Touya rushes outside the chamber to check up on his other colleagues, hoping they'd be doing fine. Unfortunately for him, when he gets outside the chamber, he sees nothing but blood splattered everywhere and shredded human body parts. In that single moment, Touya realizes the harsh reality of the situation he's in. There's a boss-level monster nearby, and he doesn't know where. Having realized the danger he's in, Touya sprints towards the entrance of the first floor, with thoughts about the boss-level monster coming out of its hiding place racing through his mind. Knowing fully well that escaping will be much harder for him if the boss-level monster decides to come out, Touya decides to pause, escaping for now, and instead tries to find and report the situation to the strike team, so they can help eliminate the monster before the entire mining team gets wiped out. He runs into a small army of slimes on his way there and gets stopped dead in his tracks. As he racks his brains to figure out his next move, a slime monster attacks him in the stomach and slams him into the wall behind him. For about 2 seconds, Touya passes out from the hit. When he does wake up, he notices a weird light purple symbol on his right hand and, upon further investigation, realizes that he's been given an Awakener's crest. In his first few moments of realizing this, Touya gasps in shock as he struggles to understand if he's seeing things correctly or not. Before long, a deep voice speaks to his mind, telling him that it's finally found the long-lost Awakener he's spent years searching for. Confused, Touya asks the voice in his head to reveal itself so he can understand better. But, rather than do that, the deep voice speaks further in more parables, creates a magic circle under Touya's feet, which glows very brightly, and then teleports poor bro into a different, more enclosed room in the same tower. Having survived the terrible landing, Touya gets up to investigate the room he's currently in, hoping he's not in any form of danger. Not too long after cleaning himself up, he spots a weird black sword with red glowing markings on its blade, embedded into some sort of altar ground, right in the middle of the room, and gets up to inspect the sword. A few seconds later, the red markings and aura on the sword start resonating with the crest on Touya's right hand, and Touya feels the pulsating hum on his hand too. Just then, the dark voice speaks from the sword and introduces itself to Touya as the magic sword, an awakening gear that has its own will, which was left behind by the previous swordsman. Upon hearing this, Touya gasps in shock as he asks the magic sword if it's really confirming that the magic swordsman he's always read about in fictional storybooks actually existed in real life. With no response from the magic sword itself, Touya figures out the answer to his question, but still stops to think about how weird the situation with the magic sword island. For all he knows, once an Awakener dies, their awakened gear would also be gone along with them, meaning a magic sword of such caliber shouldn't even be able to speak to him in the first place. Enraged by this realization, Touya figures something or someone might be trying to play a dirty prank on him, so he screams as loudly as he can and calls out whoever's puppeteering the sword behind the scenes to cut the act, so they can both save themselves some time. To help Touya understand that he's not being pranked, the magic sword tells the confused dude that it's only able to speak with Touya because the magic swordsman always uses his strength and determination to help those who are worthy to achieve their wish. At this point, poor Touya realizes that this sword is seriously the break he's been waiting for his entire life. Explaining further, the magic sword reveals to Touya that the magic swordsman's power is currently sealed within its blade. But before letting the sword continue its yap, Touya stops it and asks it about the hatred the magic swordsman had against the heroes who killed him. To his surprise, however, the magic sword tells him that even though the magic swordsman didn't hate the heroes, but was betrayed by them, whatever Touya's trying to point out still wasn't his wish at all. So, to avoid digressing from the main point of its interrogation, which is hearing out Touya's wish, the magic sword urges Touya to tell it his wish, so it can know whether his wishes align with the one left by its previous master, before lending him its strength. By this time, Touya pauses to backtrack everything that's happened in the last hour. So far, it appears that the magic sword is choosing him, meaning, if Touya accepts the sword's power, then there's a high chance that he'll become a very strong magic swordsman, just like he'd always dreamed about. As Touya continues spending more time in silence, thinking about his next choice of words, the magic sword calls to him and hurries him up to tell it the kind of wish he's trying to get so it can judge him based on his answer. Without fear or hesitation, Touya proudly tells the magic sword that he wants to use the sword to become strong enough to conquer the tower and reign supreme over all Awakeners. To achieve such a far-fetched goal, Touya tells the sword that he's ready to use anything, even a cursed sword, to get his shit together, not caring whether or not he's labeled as evil or overly ambitious. Satisfied Satisfied with his response, the magic sword praises Touya for having the exact wish that was left behind by his previous master, and then moves on to chant words of courage to Touya's mind, so he can be mentally prepared to become the strongest warrior to ever conquer the tower itself. With all that said, the sword introduces itself as the magic sword, Dainsleif, and tells Touya that it's the only awakened gear in existence that can make all his wishes come true. By this time, Touya, encouraged by the magic sword's prospects, grabs the handle of the sword, yanks it out of the ground where it was embedded, and then stares at his eerily unique Awakener's crest. Shortly after the ritual is complete, the sword completes its contract with its new master, Touya, and names him the new magic swordsman. As the reality of the situation dawns on Touya, he stares at the sword and happily names himself the latest magic swordsman in the world. Just before he celebrates too much, he notices something weird about the power of the magic sword, and tries swinging it around a few times just to test its strength. When the magic swordsman compliments his impressive swings, Touya tells him that he's been practicing swordsmanship every day for years now just so he can get ready for a moment like this. Soon after, swinging the sword around a few more times, Touya asks the sword if it has noticed something weird about its power. Turns out that it's common knowledge that an awakened gear usually determines the rank and quality of an awakener, meaning the stronger one's awakened gear is, the better power they will get. Compared to the worthless trash he used to be, Touya knows for sure that the strength of those who have awakened gear is simply inexplicable. Most times, Touya's heard from various strike team members that they feel a sudden surge of power coursing through their veins just by holding their awakened gear alone. On the other hand, Touya doesn't feel like he's getting stronger just by holding the sword at all, and he voices this to the magic sword, hoping it'll somehow explain why his awakened gear isn't boosting his strength as it should. In response to Touya's questions, the magic sword tells him never to compare it to the second-rate gears, all because it comes equipped with a unique skill that can help Touya gain infinite power. While Touya might think that Dainsleif is a cursed sword, the magic sword itself tells him about his unique skill, the Aura Eater, and then adds that it's a skill that consumes the aura of others to transform it into its own power. The moment Dainsleif finishes its explanation, a stray slime approaches Touya in the same room, but rather than ignoring it, Dainsleif, seizing the opportunity, tells him to just try killing the slime and see the power of the Aura Eater in reality. With nothing left to lose, Touya strikes the slime a few times, killing it in the process, and then surprisingly notices the power of the slime being absorbed into the red markings on Dainsleif's blade. Around that same time, he even feels his power increasing exponentially, and tries to figure out how many times he had to hit the slime to kill it. Not too long after killing the slime, Dainsleif reveals to Touya that what he just saw was its Aura Eater skill. Explaining further, it tells Touya that even if they both grow stronger, the more they fight and absorb aura, it still needs more power so it can be awakened further to reach its full potential. With this, it asks Touya one more time if he seeks unlimited strength and can handle the power he just attained. By this time, Touya stares at the sword with a smug look on his face and tells Dainsleif that he's more than ready to do what it takes to become the strongest swordsman. Soon, after saying all that, he tells Dainsleif to show him the stairs leading out of the room he's in, so he can get outside and contact the strike team. In response, Dainsleif tells him to just jump and climb the wall instead, and when Touya, who's confused, asks the sword if he already has that skill set, Dainsleif assures him that he's only telling him that to make his wish come true. Furthermore, he tells Touya that even though he doesn't know anything about this strike team he keeps talking about, he does promise him that he'll be stronger than those people in due time. For now, though, since Dainsleif's aura has been leaking from the hole in the ground, he warns Touya to get ready for a fight as he can sense a horde of slime monsters approaching them for an attack. Some seconds later, the room gets filled with countless slime monsters surrounding Touya, and this freaks him out a little bit. As soon as the magic sword notices Touya fidgeting in fear, it urges him to seize his opportunity and kill as many slime monsters as he can now so they can level up faster. And Touya, realizing that Dainsleif is right, mans up, faces his fears, and fights all the monsters attacking him. A few minutes later, Touya manages to take down as many slime monsters as he can until there are only 7 of them left. Determined to eliminate the entire horde, Touya charges at the remaining pile of monsters and takes them all down in one go. Once he's done ridding the room of all the slime monsters, he takes a breather and expresses just how surprised he is to be able to finally fight off these annoying slime monsters. By this time, Dainsleif, realizing just how weak his new master is, asks Touya why he's feeling that happy after only defeating a bunch of low-level slimes. Rather than respond to its question, Touya ignores the magic sword and instead goes on to yap about how strong he feels now that he's equipped with the aura of his awakening gear. By the time he starts talking about joining the legendary strike team everyone loves so much, poor bro suddenly gets a rush of negative emotions, as he remembers all the terrible things his friends and colleagues once said to him, all because he was worthless and weaponless. Fueled by rage and determination to become stronger, Touya asks Dainsleif if he can get much stronger, much faster by defeating a boss-level monster, most especially now that he's found out how effective Dainsleif's Aura Eater skill can be. The moment Dainsleif tells him he'll be able to defeat the same boss easily after defeating it the first time, Touya smirks smugly and decides he's not going to let the strike team defeat that boss level at all, but rather, he'll go find the boss monster and kill it himself. With that said, Touya leaves the room and spends the next few hours searching high and low for that huge hunk of armor that killed all his mining colleagues earlier. Before long, he finds the boss-level armor monster in a random cave, walking amidst its victims, and calls its attention to his presence so they can fight to the death. However, before the much-anticipated battle begins, Dainsleif pauses things for a moment and analyzes the nature of the boss on the first floor to be a giant mutant slime covered in armor. Thankful for the information, Touya considers himself lucky, as Dainsleif adds that the armored monster shouldn't be a problem for him, and charges at the armored monster to attack it. When the monster easily blocks Touya's first attack, Dainsleif realizes just how tough it is, and then tells its master that the magic sword is weak against the hunk of armor. At this point, Touya, who's pretty darn desperate for a breakthrough, asks Dainsleif if he's insinuating that he can use another weapon to defeat the armor, and Dainsleif indirectly tells him yes. As Touya painstakingly defends against the boss monster's attacks, he asks Dainsleif to tell him if he can summon another weapon, and in response, Dainsleif urges him to use his imagination, so it can respond to his calls and manifest whatever he wishes. At this point, Touya silently wishes the cursed sword would turn into an axe, and almost immediately, Dainsleif carries out his wishes by turning the cursed sword into a battle-grade legendary axe. With this, Touya slams the axe into the monster as hard as he can, hoping to finally be able to defeat the monster in the form he's currently in. Sadly, just moments after receiving the axe hit, the boss-level monster just stares at Touya, though cracked all over its side, and slowly starts transforming to a higher power level. The moment Touya spots the weird monster's transformation, he asks Dainsleif to explain what the hell's happening to the monster, and Dainsleif tells him that the armored boss monster is getting stronger, all because it's killed lots of humans and other monsters before. A few seconds later, when the armored boss-level monster fully transforms into a form called the Red General form, Dainsleif congratulates his new master for finally increasing his chances of getting even stronger upon defeating the monster, and urges him to take it down now that he has the chance. Before fighting the monster, however, Touya first accepts the fact that the monster is already leveled up compared to before, but still refuses to let himself get too scared to chicken now that he has his chance to prove his mental and physical strength to himself. With this newfound determination, he speaks words of courage to himself, charges towards the Red General monster, not minding how intimidating it looked, jumps high up to match the monster's face level, and bashes the armored boss monster's head off its shoulders like it was nothing. In the aftermath of that single strike, Touya, upon realizing that he's finally defeated the boss-level monster of the first floor, celebrates his first major achievement as an Awakener of the Cursed Sword, Dainsleif, and continues reminding himself just how easy it'll be for him to rise to the top of the tower using this new power he found just hours ago. As for Dainsleif, he also celebrates with his master by noting just how befitting Touya's desire for power truly is for him, as he slowly begins accepting the fact that he very likely wants to grow stronger with his new master, Touya. A few hours after defeating the Red General, Touya picks up the boss-level monster's decapitated head and returns to town with Dainsleif in his hand, to exchange the head for some mana stones or currency. A few minutes after he arrived at the town square, Touya stopped walking to rest in the middle of the street, failing to notice the confused stares the passers-by were giving him, all because they didn't understand why he looked so different from before. In any case, Dainsleif ignores the onlookers and instead takes this moment to observe how cool the outside world looks. Seconds after catching his breath, Touya figures that if he doesn't store Dainsleif properly, then things might get troublesome soon. Although a normal awakened gear would be stored in a crest immediately, Touya still didn't know what or how to store Dainsleif safely. Before long, Dainsleif, the cursed sword, shrinks greatly in size and confines itself to become a necklace wrapped around Touya's thick neck. Impressed by Dainsleif's thoughtfulness, Touya continues moving forward until they get to the Awakener Association building. Before entering the building, Touya stops at the entrance, where Dainsleif notices the heroes' statues and comments on how beautiful they look. Though confused to hear Dainsleif complimenting the very same heroes who sealed it, Touya asks if Dainsleif had any grudges against the pathetic heroes for sealing it. While Dainsleif does admit to the fact that it dislikes being sealed, it urges Touya to quit trying to bring up its past, and instead tells him to focus on his future as an Awakener. Still, Touya tries teasing Dainsleif, hoping he'll spill out any secret information about their past fight with the heroes. When Dainsleif refuses to even answer his question, Touya realizes he's being pushy, so he just quits, trying to be funny, and instead works on getting the general's head exchanged for some coin. By this time, Dainsleif agrees with Touya's point of view, but still, before letting him in, it warns Touya to understand that he's the only person who can hear its voice ever, meaning to the outside world, aka those around Touya. They've been seeing him talking to himself all along. As the reality of his situation slowly dawns on Touya, he suddenly starts overhearing some idiots around him murmuring and spreading rumors that he's going crazy, talking to himself for that long. In the meantime, some members of the elite strike team finally arrive at the armored boss level monsters massacre site and take some time to investigate the identities of the deceased people killed there. Not too long after they begin their investigation, they soon realize that the IDs they recovered belong to the members of the missing mining team. With the investigation still ongoing, their team leader, whose name is not mentioned at this time, asks one of his subordinates if the mining dudes were attacked by slime, and the subordinate assures him that it seems to be the case since their bodies have melted. Being the experts that they are, the leader figures that only a boss-class monster must have caused such a freak incident in the first place. Even still, since the boss monster is nowhere to be found, there must have been someone on that floor who had the strength to defeat the monster with very little stress. As the subordinate behind the team leader suggests that maybe the monster killer is someone from a different strike team, the team leader tells him that even though they're not sure who the person is at the moment, they'll eventually reveal their identities if that person wants to earn fame from it. So, for now, the team leader decides to wait and see if the monster killer will help his glory and fame increase. On the other hand, if this person happens to be a threat to his rise to fame and glory, then the team leader decides he's going to have to silence them forever. Back at the Awakener Association building, one of the strike team's biggest hotshots, Takanaka Yuji, who's known to have exceptional skills and a bigger ego to match his pathetic existence, returns with his lackeys from an 8th floor exploration mission to exchange their items and call it a day. Before tendering their items for exchange, the hotshot and his lackeys waste a few minutes in the building's lobby yapping and joking about how easy the monsters on the 8th floor of the tower are, and Yuji especially lets everyone in the building know that they defeated the monsters easily, all thanks to his magic gun, Vane. As they continue their way forward, Yuji urges his lackeys to explore the 11th floor with him for the following day, as he feels someone like him shouldn't waste his resources staying and killing 8th floor monsters for too long. Somewhere along the line, one of the beginner Awakeners, who just happens to be near the infamous Takanaka Yuji, spots him and asks his partner if Yuji is friendly with everyone. Just when the beginner's partner warns him never to let Yuji lay his eyes on him, Yuji, who's now pissed for no reason, calls both beginners out and sends them running away, scared shitless as he threatens to do a number on them if they continue humming like mosquitoes in his ears. Once the small fries are out of the building, Yuji continues toward the receptionist's desk to submit his items. Around that same time, Touya waltzes into the building, holding the Red General's head, and Yuji instantly recognizes Touya to be the pathetic loser, Takamine, whom he's always so used to bullying. While ignoring the disturbing stares from the other Awakeners, Touya walks to the receptionist, slams the Red General's head on his desk, claims to be the killer of this red monster, and then tells the receptionist to add it to his achievements. Refusing to believe that the weak Touya will ever kill a monster that strong, the receptionist urges him to tell the truth, as false reports are subject to punishment, and Touya assures him that he used the awakened gear, which he just got, to defeat the monster. By this time, Takanaka Yuji hugs Touya from behind and then asks him, with a smug look on his face, if he's truly gotten his awakened gear. Rather than respond to his question, Touya calls Yuji by his surname without using the honorifics to show he's his senior, and this pisses Yuji off for a second. Eventually, he gets over the disrespect and then moves on to ask Touya to tell him where he found the Red General's helmet. Before Touya replies to his question, Yuji picks up the helmet disrespectfully, and then lectures Touya about the appraisal skill, which can help determine the detail and quality of any item. Once Yuji's done talking, the receptionist accuses Touya of cheating and bringing some junk to exchange for some mana stones, and Yuji, supporting the receptionist, throws the helmet at Touya, fully expecting the hit to embarrass him. To his dismay, however, Touya not only catches the helmet, shocking Yuji, but also tells the bozo that he's now an adult who can handle the foolishness anybody brings to him. Initially, he used to be a pushover for everyone, but this time around, he lets Yuji know that things are now different for him, because insulting him would also mean making fun of the magic swordsman. Right after issuing the warning to the disrespectful dumbass, Touya punches Yuji so hard in the face that the poor egomaniac passes out for a second and falls ass flat to the ground, breaking the receptionist's table in half. The moment Yuji regains his senses, he rushes back up on his feet, bleeding through his nose, summons his infamous magic gun, Vane, and points it at Touya's face. Before pulling the trigger, Yuji tells everyone around Touya to get the hell out of the way so they don't get shot in the process. In that moment of hesitation, Touya gets insanely closer to the bozo and strikes the gun out of his hand, using his cursed sword. Having realized how strong Touya has become, Yuji sits his arse back on the floor and calls Touya a coward for aiming for his gun, rather than fighting him fair and square. Refusing to indulge himself in the idiot's logic, Touya warns him never to use his gun inside the association building, because it's not a place for his shooting sports hobby. Satisfied with the way he treated Yuji, Touya turns his back on him to leave after warning him never to get close to him again, as he assures him that he won't let him get away next time. By this time, Yuji, who refuses to accept defeat, gets back up on his feet and tries to attack Touya behind his back, claiming never to back off, especially after being mocked by someone like him. This time around, Touya refuses to show the foolish coward any mercy, so he lands yet another devastating punch on the fool, and watches the so-called powerful Yuji crash land on the set of chairs behind him. Soon after, Touya asks Yuji if it's that hard to stay away from him, but then again, rather than let his master waste time talking to the loser, Dainsleif just tells him to ignore Yuji and try to get the red helmet appraised. With this, Touya turns to the receptionist and tells him to do his calculations well. At this point, the receptionist, having seen just how easily he defeated Yuji, quickly collects the helmet for appraisal. Upon settling things with the receptionist, Touya walks out of the building, turning heads on his way out, and leaves to get some rest. Shortly after watching him leave, the receptionist, who notices the unique crest he had never seen before on Touya's right hand, quickly phones his superiors to inform them that he has just found a new crest. By nightfall, Touya returns home and tells Dainsleif, who notices the wear and tear on his practice equipment, that he uses them to train every single day. Impressed to hear this, Dainsleif encourages Touya to keep up the good work and finally understands why Touya finds it very easy to transform it into any weapon form smoothly. Moments later, when Touya falls asleep, Dainsleif does get curious when he suddenly gets the urge to understand how Touya got to know about him. At first, he tries calling Touya to ask him some questions, but when he spots his master having his beauty sleep, Dainsleif pulls up some holographic pictures of pages from a children's book and reads through some of the pages, only to realize just how evil the magic swordsman is portrayed to the kids. Even though Dainsleif is a little bit concerned about this fact, it does take a moment to wonder if his master truly has some evil qualities inside him as well. For now, though, all it can do is let Touya rest up and watch him grow into whatever he plans to become in the near future. The following morning, Touya wakes up to admire his unique Awakener crest and amuse himself over having made it as a magic swordsman. Satisfied with the power he's gained so far, Touya stares at Dainsleif, speaks some positive words to encourage himself for his next exploits, and talks about going to a dungeon to fight some monsters in that exact moment. Although Dainsleif is pretty okay with the positive energy, it shows Touya some of the holographic children's book pictures it examined the previous day, and this shocks Touya so much that he asks his cursed sword if it's truly summoning the pages using magic. Ignoring his question, Dainsleif asks Touya if the pictures from the children's book are something well known. In response, Touya, while slamming his book shut, tells Dainsleif that it's not very popular among kids, because the stories there are usually considered fictional, back when he was younger. Following this, Touya mentions a few more off-putting facts about the existence of the magic sword, as well as some other fictional stories that he read as a kid. Although many of these weird facts rub Dainsleif the wrong way, it keeps its cool and continues listening to Touya. Having said all that stuff about fiction and facts, Touya tells Dainsleif that he now believes the existence of the strongest magic sword to be true, because he's experienced its power for himself firsthand. On the contrary, Dainsleif tells Touya that the person who wrote the story in the book might not have expected him to believe the story like that. Even though many people see the book as a useless one, Dainsleif still gives the author some accolades for creating such an amazing story. As he places the book back on its shelf, Touya lets Dainsleif know that the book Dainsleif calls useless is one that gives him his goal, and then moves on to clean himself up for the day's work. Along the line, Dainsleif asks Touya if he's going to the right from his house, but Touya tells him that he needs to visit the association building first before returning to battle. Moments later, Touya arrives at the association building, and almost instantly, people start noticing him as the loser-turned-hero who blew Yuji's back the previous day. Just then, another poor schmuck approaches Touya, stopping him right dead in his tracks, and then demands to know what trick Touya used to take Yuji down. Knowing fully well that he doesn't have any time to waste on a small fry, Touya gives the guy his first warning to back down and let him pass. Refusing to let such disrespect slide, the idiot tries to attack Touya from behind, thinking Touya won't see it coming. To his dismay, Touya gives him the death stare, letting him know that he's ready to kill him right then and there. And this causes the spineless schmuck to shiver in extreme fear of Touya's demeanor. Eventually, when Touya decides he's done with the jokester, he approaches the receptionist on shift, who is a woman this time, and tells her that he wants to be removed from the mining team so he can be transferred to the strike team. While the receptionist does tell him that he can get transferred, seeing as he got a new crest, she does tell Touya that he needs a recommendation letter first before she can authorize his transfer to the strike team. Though confused, Touya tells her that he's pretty good enough to be qualified for an official transfer. But just as the conversation's about to get deeper, someone else arrives on the scene and tells Touya, with a smug look on his face, that the letter is a recommendation note regarding his real ability, so the strike team won't just let him die in vain and whatnot. With all that said, the unknown smug dude tells Touya to show him his crest together with his awakened gear, so he can be the one to judge. Before doing that, however, Touya asks whoever is near him to tell him who that shady looking guy is. But then someone tells him that the dude with a smug look on his face is Shinju Ryo, the current captain of the strike team C. For all they know, Shinju's combat ability is on par with a Team A strike team member. And this makes Touya, who's now surprised, ask Shinju why he's suddenly taken an interest in him. In response to Touya's question, Shinju tells Touya, who used to be called a loser, that he just wants to host a mock battle with Touya to see the awakened gear that managed to defeat an unknown boss. With all that said, Touya follows Shinju to a quiet arena in the association building, and complains about the rented equipment, which reeks of sweat, being lackluster and subpar to the gear he's used to wearing. Looking over to Touya, however, Shinjo notices just how unfazed he looks by the weight of the armor they both rented. Seconds before fighting Touya, Shinju lets him know that this mock battle is what'll let him and the strike team know whether or not he's a fake or the real deal. As for the simple rule, Shinju tells Touya that they're not allowed to use any aura, so they don't get any unfair advantages over each other. Soon after saying all that, he summons his awakened gear, the great sword Adamandine, and urges Touya to show him his awakened gear. With no time to waste, Touya easily summons Dainsleif's cursed magic sword form and showcases it to his opponent, Shinjo. Upon hearing Touya call his sword a magic sword, Shinju gets a little worried that he might have heard Touya wrong, so he just ignores his rambling thoughts and begins the mock battle. The moment Shinjo blinks, Touya gets dangerously close to the guy and swings his sword at him. Luckily for Shinjo, he manages to block Touya's attack. During his counterattack, however, Shinju takes notes of some of Touya's swings and defense system. Soon enough, when he's done vetting Touya's abilities, Shinjo ends the battle and tells Touya that he never expected him to fight with such tenacity and parity as he does. At this point, Touya just stares at the guy, confused, and asks him why he ended the battle so abruptly. Well, Shinju tells him that the battle was one to only see his skill, and not a battle to the death. Satisfied with everything he's seen so far, Shinju congratulates Touya for impressing him and promises to recommend him to join the strike team. A few hours later, when Yuji finds out that Touya, the loser, will be joining the strike team, he approaches Shinju at the strike team's HQ, asks a few questions to fully understand if Shinju's really going to let Touya join the strike team, and then urges Shinju to reconsider his decision to let Touya join, simply because Yuji feels Touya is trash. Furthermore, Yuji tells Shinjo that Touya's awakened gear, which is probably just trash like he used to be, is shady and very suspicious. Tired of all the ramblings, Shinju turns to Yuji and calls him out for losing in a fair battle to the trash he hates so much. In his defense, the hapless idiot claims that the fight wasn't a fair one, all because Touya was too much of a coward to attack his gun first before fighting him properly. Realizing just how stupid Yuji is, Shinjo helps him understand that going for the weapon in a fair fight is the first, most human thing to do, and then warns that he probably doesn't know that because he's been stuck inside the tower for so long already. Rather than accept his fault and apologize for causing a ruckus, Yuji starts screaming at his master, calling whatever he just uttered nonsense, and assuring Shinjo that he could have taken Touya down if they'd fought head-on. As if that wasn't enough, Yuji started demanding, in a passive-aggressive manner, that Shinjo retract his recommendation since he's the captain of Team C, and nobody can complain against his decision. To silence the Nimrod, Shinjo summons his great sword, Adamandine, and points it straight between Yuji's eyes. Scared shitless, Yuji freezes and asks Shinjo to explain what he's trying to do. After explaining just how bitchy bro is to him, Shinjo retracts his sword, turns to continue walking, and then tells Yuji that he's seriously doubting his skill at that moment. When Yuji tries to remind his boss that he's one of the biggest hotshots in the strike team, Shinjo shuts him up and tells Yuji to show his skill through his actions and achievements. To properly do this, however, Shinjo tells Yuji about certain circumstances on floor 6 of the tower, and then tells Yuji that if he can defeat whatever thing that's stuck there, then he'll reconsider his capabilities once again and treat him like an elite member of the strike team. Around that same time, Touya's seen in the tower, fighting off goblins and other small fries attacking him on the floor. At some point, after defeating one of the waves, he tells Dainsleif that he still doesn't feel any stronger than the previous day, despite having defeated various monsters with various weapons, and Dainsleif, understanding his master's situation, tells Touya that he needs to absorb a high concentration aura to become much stronger than he now island. Upon hearing this, Touya figures he needs to push himself a little further if he wants to become strong enough to conquer the tower before the others. As for his next destination, Touya recalls some high-level monsters he's once heard about on the 6th floor and figures that if he goes there, then he's very likely to level up and become stronger than he is now. Before getting to that, however, he does remember that he needs to do something about his equipment, and Dainsleif, seeing this, tells him it'd be nice to get some dropped equipment, so upgrading his gear would be much easier for him. As such, Touya stays on that floor for a little longer and continues killing off as many monsters as he can just so he can get the dropped items Dainsleif just told him about. A few minutes into his killing spree, Touya tells Dainsleif to return to the association building when they're done defeating the boss-level monster, who he feels must be around the corner. Soon after fighting off a few more goblins, Touya finally makes it to the boss room to find the boss-level goblin monster, aka the Goblin Magician. Having realized the nature of this boss, Dainsleif tells Touya that the magic-type aura is worth being absorbed, as he knows for sure that Touya will get stronger if he can absorb the magical aura, and instead of the normal type aura. Happy to hear that information, Touya gets off his feet and charges at the Goblin Magician and his guards. Having seen the intruder, Touya, charging at their master, the Goblin Magician's guards step up to defend their master, but Touya wastes no time smashing through their defense line to get to their master. The moment their Goblin Magician spots Touya coming at him, he attacks him with a wide-range magic fire attack, hoping to end him. But Touya not only phases through the fire attack, he also slices the Goblin Magician's body clean in half, killing him in the process. With their boss-level monster gone, Touya turns to the rest of the goblins, staring down at them in a menacing way, and kills off every single goblin left. Shortly after clearing the 6th floor, Touya returns to the association building to add the achievement to his record. The receptionist, after receiving the dropped items, grants Touya his temporarily issued C-rank license card and explains to him that he's only at rank C because there has been no record of magic swords in the past, as this is the first time she's seeing something like that. Hearing this, Touya figures the record of the magic sword must have been completely erased from the history books, so copycats don't fantasize about using the sword to wreak more havoc. Soon after issuing Touya his license, the receptionist gets right on with processing the items he brought and then asks if he needs anything else. With no response given, she tells Touya that the association plans to conduct another rank reevaluation on a certain date, so he can come get his proper ranking by that time. Moving on from that matter, the receptionist hands Touya a check of 30 million yen as the monetary reward for the red helmet he brought before, together with the required funds for becoming a part of the C-rank strike team. As Touya gasps in shock at realizing he's suddenly a rich man, the receptionist, who understands his shock, tells him the money's already deposited into his account. In addition to that, she also tells him that he'll be given a suitable room in their facility as a bona fide member of the C-rank team, and then gives him a key and a map to his new suite. Not too long after receiving his check, Touya leaves the receptionist's desk to find his way to his new suite, all while doing his best to adapt to the sudden changes in his lifestyle. On his way up to his suite, Touya runs into 3 of Yuji's lackeys, who block his way forward, and then asks them if there's anything they need from him. As all 3 glare at him, the pathetic leader of the group tells Touya not to get too cocky just because he won using a dirty trick. As it turns out, these negative IQ toddlers still think Yuji's much stronger and better than Touya, even after Touya, who knocked his arse and sent him crying like a little coward. Surprised by their stupidity, Touya asks them if they want another duel with him, but then again, knowing fully well that they stand no chance against the strong Touya, the idiots tell him that the job of the strike force isn't that simple, and that he'll soon know his place. As soon as they're done yapping, the bozos leave, and both Touya and his cursed sword are left wondering what the hell just happened. In due time, Touya figures they must be eager to hunt something big and strong, which is the common cliche amongst these self-proclaimed big shots. Elsewhere, Shinjo reads up on some facts about magic swords and how they work. Although he still doesn't have Dainsleif completely figured out yet, he does know for sure that Touya's magic sword is an awakened gear that's above all others, meaning that over time, both the weapon and the user will grow much stronger. Satisfied with the contents of the book he just read, Shinjo closes it, and realizes that the existence of the magic sword itself is one that their ancestors feared so much. refusing to be like them. Shinjo decides to prove to them just how easy it'll be for him to use Touya and Dainsleif for his fame and glory. While Touya makes his way to the equipment shop to get his upgrades, Yuji's strike team E prepares itself to fight the mutant boss level monster on the 6th floor. In an attempt to clear it, before embarking on this perilous quest, Yuji smugly ensures his team has all the necessary potions, tools, and armor needed in good condition to see this mission through. After doing a last status check on their equipment, Yuji reminds his team about their mission, which is to subjugate the mutated boss class monster on floor 6 and try to return in one piece. From the information they have so far, this so-called mutated boss class is a skeleton general they have to fight and finish quickly, so they can show everyone on the ground who's boss. Having incited the fighting spirit in his team, Yuji gives his team the order to depart, and almost instantly, they head toward the 6th floor. Around that same time, Touya finally arrives at the sophisticated equipment shop for the Awakeners, and stops to admire the quality and class of the weapons in there with Dainsleif. Seeing as the weapons shop has to meet the various demands in the market, Touya figures he doesn't need to worry about his funds in there, because the security looks pretty tight enough. Soon after exploring the shop a little more, Touya finds himself on floor 2F, which is the equipment and armor parts room, and browses through the exquisite armor types available for sale on the show glass. Before long, he chooses a light brown cape, wears it to test its effectiveness in real battle situations, and then figures that the cape should protect him well enough for the next few floors. The moment he wears the cape, an attendant from the store instantly pops up behind him and showers compliments on Touya for choosing that specific armor type like a G. Not too long after, Touya buys the expensive cape and is warmly thanked for purchasing it at the store. On his way out of the equipment store 2F, two ladies notice Touya walking near them and wonder if they've ever seen such a cool person on that floor before. While one of the ladies asks the questions, the other responds that she's probably seen Touya's hot face somewhere before. By this time, Dainsleif, who overheard the ladies, asks Touya what he thinks about them, seeing him as a cool person, and Touya tells his cursed sword that they see him that way, all because of the charm of their equipment. Although Touya was under the impression that getting positive attention might be fun for him, he still didn't understand why such things didn't faze him at all. For now, though, since he has no time to wander around, Touya quickly leaves the store for the tower. Upon getting to the 5th floor of the tower, Touya and Dainsleif notice the weird gazes people were giving them. But then again, Touya, who knows what he's there for, refuses to indulge in their spite and instead decides to focus on his interest, which is on floor 6 and above. When Dainsleif asks him why he's not interested in the 5th floor, Touya tells his cursed sword that while it's true that he also has something he needs to do there, fighting stronger monsters takes priority over other peripheral missions there. Just then, a bunch of people run towards Touya's crowd, panting and looking all distressed. At first, Touya thought they'd discovered something quite dangerous on the 5th floor. However, when he figures they probably have nothing interesting to say, he leaves the crowd on the 5th floor and heads on to the 6th. Soon enough, when the running dudes stop running, they ask each other questions to try and figure out why the strike team E aren't back from their expedition on the 6th floor yet. Apparently, they were scheduled to be back around 7 p.m., but it's already 9 o'clock and they aren't even back yet. Although there isn't much evidence to cause any concern, the team is still very worried that the subjugation mission with Strike Team E might have failed. Touya, on the other hand, spends his first hour on the 6th floor, killing off various skeleton monsters and complaining to Dainsleif over how easy they all are to kill. To help Touya understand why the skeletons are so easy to kill, Dainsleif tells him it's probably because the skeleton-type monsters, which move around using aura, suddenly had their aura stolen from them via their skill, Aura Eater, so it's only normal for them to be killed easily. With this, Touya kills off more skeleton monsters much faster, so he can get through there fast enough and face the boss-level mutant in time. Curious, Dainsleif asks him why he's rushing to get to the boss when he can easily get stronger there, seeing as the skeleton monsters are aura-type monsters, and Touya says it's because he doesn't want to spoil himself with something too easy to do. Impressed by its master's grit, Dainsleif compliments him for not wanting to choose the easy way out, and then urges him to press further until they get to the monster's level. 30 minutes later, Touya arrives in a room filled with bloodstains and dropped items from what appears to be human awakeners, all over the floor and walls. Confused, he asks his cursed sword if someone died in that room. And although that's the case, Dainsleif does tell him that corpses are usually erased inside a dungeon moments after they form. Thankfully, all Touya needs to identify whoever died there is an ID card, so he searches through the debris left behind for one. Before long, he finds an ID card of one of the victims and soon realizes that the guy used to be Yoshida Go from Yuji's Strike Team E. Seeing this, Dainsleif asks his master if it's possible that these guys were killed by mere skeletons. But then Touya tells his cursed sword that, based on his knowledge, the skeletons shouldn't even be able to do that kind of devastating damage to the kind of armor these guys have on. Plus, he knows Teamy is used to fighting on the 6th floor, so them being annihilated by the very monsters they're so used to fighting is just far-fetched. After ruling out that fact, Touya cites that these people must have been killed by the boss-level mutant monster, signaling that the monster is around the corner. At that same moment, the cocky bastard, Takenaka Yuji, stumbles upon the mutant boss-level monster and nearly pisses his pants in shock, as he tries to figure out what the hell just appeared to him. While the gigantic mutant monster inches closer to intimidate Yuji, who's now scared shitless, pulls out his magic gun, Vane, and shoots countless bullets at the mutant skeleton boss monster, hoping to do some kind of damage to the huge monster. Unfortunately for him, his half-gun bullets don't work this time, as the boss monster easily blocks and deflects all his bullets. When the reality of his demise dawns on him, Yuji lets out a frustrated scream, cussing out the monster and his ill luck, as he realizes he stands no chance against this crazy monster attacking him. As the main story continues, it's revealed, for some context, that a mutated boss-class monster is a monster that sometimes appears inside a dungeon and possesses tremendous strength. In other words, it's a type of boss monster, usually mutated from a normal monster, that doesn't fit in any rank specification. Most times, many mutated boss-level monsters, which are reported to be much stronger than normal boss-type monsters, boost the stats of the other monsters on the floor they appear in, so that's why defeating one of those mutant boss-level monsters is considered a very big deal in the Awakener business. As for Yuji, whose only option of survival is getting as far away as possible from the skeleton boss-level monster, he runs into a maze somewhere else on the 6th floor, and hides at a corner when he's sure that he's a little safe. In less than a minute of hiding, the idiot spots a skeleton monster's silhouette popping out from the corner in front of him, and totally unleashes a load of bullets on the poor thing. Fully convinced that he just shot and killed the boss-level mutant monster, Yuji celebrates his victory a little bit too early, only for him to get the shock of his life when other vanguard, skeleton, monsters show up right in front of him to avenge the death of their comrade. Suddenly, Yuji realizes he's messed things up, as he sees that he's only killed the vanguard trash, whom he never thought were that smart. So, for now, though, he keeps his guard up to avoid getting killed and continues hiding. Meanwhile, Touya, upon hearing the sound of Yuji's gunshot, figures Yuji must be nearby, and then tells Dainsleif that they have to find him. Confused, Dainsleif asks Touya if he's truly searching for Yuji with no ulterior motive. But then Touya tells Dainsleif that he only wants to find him because there's a high chance that the boss is where Yuji Island. With that said, Touya investigates the dropped weapons scattered all over the maze, and notices that the number of spears has increased lately. As he continues, muttering some words about the danger of the situation to himself, a few vanguard skeleton monsters appear before him for an attack. Before engaging the skeletons, Dainsleif asks Touya, while he unsheathes his cursed sword, if he's going to defeat them using a spear. In response, Touya tells his sword, while morphing Dainsleif to take the form of a whip sword, that he's going to try something else. With all that said, bro uses the whip sword he just created to skillfully take down a bunch of the skeleton monsters without breaking a sweat. Having seen how skillful his master is, Dainsleif asks Touya how he learned to use the whip sword like that, seeing as it didn't notice any whip sword instrument inside his old room on its first day with him, and Touya tells his sword that he's practiced with a whip before, so it's just another day at work for him. Notwithstanding, Touya does tell Dainsleif that their current situation is a little hard to grasp, simply because he's noticed that the skeletons are evolving. To help its master understand what's happening here, Dainsleif tells Touya that the skeleton vanguards must be affected by the mutated boss. If this goes on, then it's almost certain that the normal monsters will also be affected after some time. Realizing the seriousness of the situation they're currently trapped in, Touya refuses to just sit idly by and do nothing. So, right after defeating the skeletons with the whip sword, he reforms Dainsleif into some type of special boots. He calls the enhanced boots, puts them on, and then continues smashing the other skeleton monsters to death, since all he has to do to defeat the monsters is just reach them before they can reach him. As more skeleton vanguards flock around Touya, he gets serious about fighting them because he knows that the boss monster will be close to them soon. Around that same time, Yuji, after shooting countless bullets at the never-ending vanguards of the mutant boss-level skeleton monster, eventually realizes that the monster isn't at the level of a typical monster on the 6th floor. Refusing to back down now, the poor idiot continues shooting and taking down more skeleton vanguards to clear a path for him to escape from. Unfortunately for him, he reaches his limit long before he manages to clear the path he needs to escape. Luckily for him, before the skeleton vanguards finish him up, Touya shows up in the nick of time, alerts the mutant boss-level skeleton monster, and destroys all the skeleton vanguards in one singular attack. having seen the tremendous display of raw strength from his arch-nemesis, Touya. Yuji gasps in shock as he slowly realizes that Touya just saved his arse from getting killed. Not only that, he does notice the weird new boots Touya used to kill some of the monsters, and then wonders if Touya's gotten some new kind of awakened gear that's different from his cursed sword or whatnot. For all he knows, each Awakener is supposed to save one weapon type only, but Yuji just couldn't wrap his head around the strong new boots Touya has on him yet. While ignoring Yuji's existence, Touya turns to the mutant boss-level skeleton monster right after defeating all his minions, teases him by calling him General Skeleton, and then proceeds to fight the boss monster. Just then, Dainsleif warns Touya that, with the current weapon form he has, he won't be able to penetrate the boss-level monster's defense. Knowing fully well that using a hammer is truly going to be useless against the boss monster, Touya reverts the cursed sword's form to its original one and decides to launch a frontal fight against the monster. As expected, the beast easily defends Touya's first strike with his bright pink glowing longsword. Still, before launching his second strike, Touya recoils in shock because he feels that the boss-level monster's sword is a bit off, almost as if it's engulfed in something. By this time, Dainsleif explains to his master that the skeleton general, which also happens to be able to use aura, uses a skill that affixes aura to the sword. In other words, the boss-level mutant skeleton's sword is already a part of him, and since Touya doesn't have the same skill set yet, he lacks a little in firepower against the skeleton general. Seeing this, Touya decides to fight the skeleton without using his sword or any melee attacks. So, to catch the mutant skeleton general by surprise, he shoots a huge magic fireball attack at the boss-level skeleton, and engulfs Bro in a big flame of burning balls. As the fire singes on the skeleton's hard bones, the general screams pathetically while it slowly melts into a pool of bone material. In the aftermath of the attack, Touya waits a few seconds to observe the situation and make sure his fire attack worked. While Yuji tries to scold him for being reckless, Touya, on the other hand, stares at the red general's corpse and wonders why it isn't disappearing, especially now that he's destroyed it with his fire attack. Just then, the mutant skeleton's eyes glow bright red, and almost immediately, the corpse starts evolving into another creature. The moment Touya figures out what the hell's going on, he does his best to launch yet another fire attack to take the mutant monster down. Sadly, before his fire attack gets to the evolving boss monster, the mutant boss monster finishes evolving into a partial dragon and shoots a devastating beam of light blue fire in Touya's direction. To protect himself, Touya quickly changes Dainsleif's form to that of a huge shield and uses this shield to protect his entire body from the monster's fire attack. For a moment, Touya suspects that the boss-level monster is transformed into a dragon, but soon after, observing the monster's form, he realizes that the boss-level form only resembles that of a dragon. For all he knows, the boss-level's raw power is much higher than his, seeing as he can't even get close to it at all. However, before he gives up on the fight, Touya suddenly realizes that he still has a way to take down the evolved monster. So, on the monster's next attack, Touya lunges high up and smashes the monster's head to smithereens. Almost instantly, the evolved monster's body disintegrates into a bunch of smaller skeletons, and Touya finally realizes that the boss monster isn't fusing, but rather transforming from many skeletons. In other words, everything he's been fighting or battling with so far is just a bluff. With this newfound realization, Touya morphs Dainsleif's form into a hammer and finishes the rest of the monster by hitting it as hard as he can. In just a few seconds after getting hit, the mutant boss-level monster screams inaudibly as its skeletal body slowly breaks and disappears into thin air. Soon after destroying the monster, Touya, while grabbing the dropped gem from the monster, comments on how weak the so-called boss-level monster is, despite having lots of firepower. As for Yuji, who just can't wrap his head around what the hell he just saw Touya do, he just keeps staring at the dude he hates so much, both scared and curious to understand what the hell just happened right in front of him. Soon enough, Touya remembers Yuji's existence and then asks if he can get back to the ground floor all by himself, hoping Bro can do at least that much. Rather than answer that, Yuji angrily calls Touya a bastard, and then tells him that he still has lots of explaining to do. When Touya doesn't entertain the fool's bait, Yuji does the impossible by bowing before Touya to thank and apologize for all the trouble he's caused so far. If anything, Yuji admits that he's been a fool for not recognizing Touya's strength earlier, and then indirectly asks if Touya could forgive him completely. By this time, Dainsleif asks Touya what his next move is, but to Yuji's dismay, Touya says he's not going to forgive him. Thankfully, Yuji understands that he's been a useless jerk the entire time, so he doesn't get angry at Touya's words this time. Just so, the bowing fool doesn't feel indebted to him or whatever. Touya assures Yuji that he doesn't want anything from him at all to atone for his stupidity in the past, because he feels there's no point in talking about this any further, since it's already in the past. So, while they're at it, he urges Yuji to just forget about everything that's happened so far, and walks away shortly afterward. Understanding the situation, Yuji just stands there on the 6th floor, watching Touya disappear into the darkness, and figures that since he's already losing to Touya in so many ways, then there really is no point in drawing this out. Not too long after Touya disappears, Yuji returns to Shinja's office at the association building to submit his report on the events that happened that day, to him, his fallen team, and Touya as well. Soon after reading his report, Shinju seems unsurprised that Touya has already gone that deep up the tower, and this causes Yuji to raise an eyebrow, as he asks Shinju why he isn't that shocked to hear that. In response, Shinju tells him that he's not surprised because he knows he'd do the same thing if he were in Touya's shoes. Hearing this, Yuji figures Shinju already has some expectations for Touya. But then again, Shinju, who doesn't deny this, also notices some changes in Yuji's personality and asks what caused it. In his defense, Yuji tells his boss that he'd be the biggest jerk in the building if, at this point in his life, he can't be better after seeing someone like Touya, who used to be trash, prove his strength to him. With all that said, Yuji ends his impromptu meeting with Shinju and leaves the office after bidding Shinju farewell. Shortly after Yuji leaves, Shinju thinks about coercing Touya to get to the 9th floor, since he's already defeated a mutated boss on the 6th floor, so he can try his luck at defeating the 9th floor boss. For now, though, Shinju figures all he can do is wait to see what his other strong colleague on the 15th floor would do during her exploration. Around that same time, Touya is seen on the 9th floor of the tower, cancelling out some rooms he'd already explored on a makeshift map of the place, and then asking Dainsleif if the 9th floor boss, which he's been searching for hours now, is already dead. Seeing as this particular mutated boss is pretty known for wandering around the 9th floor, changing its location almost every hour, Dainsleif tells Touya that he'll need some luck to catch the monster, and this irritates Touya a little bit. Sadly, since he has to defeat the boss to get stronger, Touya spends a few seconds thinking about minotaurs and how insane their raw strength island. For all he knows, a minotaur's strength is usually on par with the monsters on the 20th floor, making it a high-ranking monster. Even so, if Touya can defeat it, then he'll definitely get much stronger. Just then, the entire space he's in starts vibrating vigorously, but before anything happens, Touya sprints out of there, running as quickly as he can, only to stop when he spots a minotaur fighting with something or someone else. As Touya tries to figure out who the minotaur is fighting, he suddenly hears a female voice screaming out the word Trivortex, and before he can even realize what's happening, the minotaur gets sucked into a raging purple, magical vortex, which kills it instantly. At that moment, Touya stares at the fighter's silhouette, terrified of finding out who just killed the freaking minotaur in front of him, and waits until he or she reveals themselves to him. Before long, the minotaur killer appears before him as a female elf, but just as Touya is about to talk to her, the happy-go-lucky elf lady heaves a sigh of relief as she gives him a handshake, and finally glad to have found him after searching for so long. Following this, the elf lady introduces herself as Alfea, the daughter of the elven king, Chariot, and Touya quickly gets acquainted with her, but albeit shocked over how clumsy and socially awkward the lady can be. With the introductions out of the way, Alfea asks Touya if he's the infamous new magic swordsman, but then Touya demands to know what she'll do about it if he tells her that he is the magic swordsman. By this time, Alfea stares at Touya, confused, and then tells him that she was just curious to know about his strength as a magic swordsman since she's heard from countless others that he's pretty strong. In any case, now that she's sensed his magic power and strength from the handshake, Alfea quickly concludes that Touya is a weakling, so she just turns her back and continues on her merry way. Refusing to let her go, Touya asks if she came down here just to confirm his magic strength level, and although Alfea tells him yes, she does add that the previous magic swordsman was the closest person to conquer the 79th floor, so she expected him to have the same power and agility as the former. Since she now knows that he's not the same as the previous magic swordsman, Alfea urges him not to worry about anything and just continues doing this thing. At this point, Touya, refusing to be seen as a weakling, asks Alfea if she really is as strong as she thinks she is, and Alfea says that she actually island. With this, Touya challenges her to a small mock battle, but Alfea, feeling bad for Touya, tells him she doesn't like bullying the weak. To convince her, Touya promises to help her understand just how strong a magic swordsman is if she can fight him, and Alfea, who's been curious to see for herself just how strong magic swordsmen really are, prepares herself for the mock battle. As both sides arm themselves for the fight, Dainsleif educates his master a bit about the long lives of the elves. Since they're usually prone to extreme boredom and contempt, Dainsleif tells Touya that they often like to kill some time by pursuing and learning different phases of life for centuries on end. In Alfea's case, Dainsleif can see that she's very much interested in the pursuit of power. So, if she's been that interested in such a subject for a long enough time, then she may be way stronger than Touya ever imagined. As Dainsleif ends his discussion, Alfea, who's already about to launch her first magic attack, promises not to kill Touya in the mock battle, as she prepares to put him in a world of pain. Luckily for Touya, as Althea launches her first magic attack against him, he quickly transforms Dainsleif into a full body-sized shield and completely blocks out all the high-energy beams directed at him. The moment the dust settles, Althea's smug face quickly turns to shock when she realizes that Touya is completely unscathed from her first devastating attack. To understand what just happened, Althea asks Touya to tell her where his sword is, but just then, Touya ignores her, transforms the shield back into the cursed sword, and counterattacks Althea. While defending against Touya's attacks, Althea finally understands the trick. Touya pulled to summon the big defender shield earlier, and then tells Touya that she knows he can change the form of his awakened gear freely. As their fight ensues, Althea suddenly notices her magic attacks completely disappearing, almost as if they were being absorbed by something, and instantly tells Touya to stop fighting for now. Confused, Touya asks her to explain what she's trying to do. But then Althea says, in an angry tone, that she knows he was the one who absorbed her magic aura just now. After listening to her questions and comments for a few more seconds, Touya finally admits the truth. But even so, Althea still asks to make sure he's sure he can do such. While ignoring her, Touya stops to think about how this little elf was able to notice Dainsleif's aura eater skill when nobody's ever noticed that before. In an attempt to understand Althea's thought process a little more, Touya asks Dainsleif to tell him how she was able to figure out his skill. Well, Dainsleif tells his ignorant master that elves are always known to have extremely sharp senses, which sometimes even helps them sense magical aura. Hearing this, Touya moves on to scold Dainsleif for not telling him all that before engaging Althea. Just then, Althea spots him talking with someone else, so she throws a tantrum at him for completely ignoring her existence. Soon enough, Touya tells Althea that he just found out that she's an amazing person, and while Althea knows that already, she does tell Touya that this is the first time in her long life that she's seen someone consume aura like that. With this, she touches Touya, hoping to get a sense of what Dainsleif's power feels like, but then feels nothing at all, and gets surprised and intrigued by this new skill she's never heard of before. As she slowly starts believing in Touya's potential, he lets her know just how important the power is for him. And Althea, now fully interested in learning Touya's strength, explains that elves use aura to conjure magic spells. Although there's a limit on how much aura elves can utilize, she's noticed in the short time she's known Touya that his awakened gear doesn't seem to have that limit at all. Around this time, the curious Althea starts fidgeting all around Touya, treating him almost as if he were her specimen, and then condemns her father for trying to hide something this interesting from her. Touya gets a very bad feeling about knowing this girl, but for now, before getting too invested in her, he thanks her for all the help and enlightenment and takes his leave. Before letting her new specimen leave, however, Althea asks him if he's also going to climb the tower, and Touya tells her that his main goal is to conquer the tower. That said, Althea happily invites him to accompany her to the 15th floor since she's also on her way home. For a moment, Touya asks Althea what she's going to do to him if he declines her request, but just then, Althea, who once put on a happy face, changes her demeanor instantly and tells Touya that she can't allow him to do that. At this point, Touya figures he'd be causing unnecessary troubles for himself if he said anything pointless. Also, Dainsleif tells him to try to understand Althea because most elves usually act like children when they don't get what they want. As Touya agrees to accompany her, Althea thinks about the magic sword in Touya's possession and remembers it to be the awakened gear that almost reached the devil's throat. As she continues soliloquizing, the scene ends and shifts to the next. About an hour later, Althea and Touya finally reach the entrance to the 10th floor of the tower. However, before they go up the floor, Althea suggests they take a small break, and Touya lets her know that this is his first time getting to the 10th floor. Hearing this, Althea talks about how shocked she was to see so many people on that floor when she was climbing down the tower, and then adds that she eventually discovered that the 10th floor is the frontline base camp for the strike team. If anything, such a floor should have some things to support a human's daily necessities, so Althea urges Touya to expect a bunch of people camping on the 10th floor. With all that said, the duo presses on toward the 10th floor. But when they get there, Touya and Althea spot about a dozen bodies scattered all over the space, almost as if they were burned by some monster or element. Initially, Althea and Touya try to figure out what the hell just happened there, simply because there shouldn't be any monsters on the 10th floor. Just then, Althea notices Touya staring at her suspiciously, and quickly clears her name as she figures he might think she's the attacker, while Touya already knows that she's obviously not the attacker. Seeing as these burn marks on the victims are very recent, he does tell her that they have to investigate what's happening first before drawing any conclusions. Having said all that, Touya continues investigating the bodies of the victims, racking his brain as he tries to figure out why the 10th floor, which is supposed to be a safe zone, would get so dangerous. After only checking out the bodies for a few seconds, he suggests to Alfea that maybe there was some sort of internal dispute between them, but then Alfea tells him that when she was passing through the floor on her way down the tower, the entire atmosphere seemed to be very peaceful, so it's very unlikely for them to have any major fights. In addition, she tells Touya that the first humans to come to the 10th floor and colonize it into a safe zone found it to be a deserted island, meaning there shouldn't be anything of that much value snooping around, simply because they can't survive. Just as Alfea is about to demonstrate something, Touya senses something coming from a deep rumble and quickly gets Alfea behind him to protect her. As Alfea stares at him, irritated by this naive gesture, Touya, lost in thought, figures the intruder must be something from outside the 10th floor. By the time Dainsleif notices his master spending too much time thinking about possible suspects, he suddenly tells him to be careful of his surroundings. Before long, Touya takes another look at the burn marks on one of the victims' bodies and wonders if he was killed by a lightning attack, just like the one he saw Alfea do during their first meeting. Seconds later, Alfea, who's been behind him the entire time, asks if he's already figured out a list of possible suspects, suggesting that maybe a mutant boss level monster did this. But then, Touya tells her that even if a mutant boss caused the incident, there's no way a single boss like that will cause this much damage to more than a dozen people. Besides, the majority of the victims are people who've already reached the 15th floor before, so they should be strong enough to face a mutant boss monster at this level. At this point, Dainsleif, who's been listening the entire time, tells Touya that he's now convinced that the intruder must have been a demon. Hearing this, Touya accidentally calls out the word demon, and Alfea, who heard him, gasps in shock. Confused, Touya asks her if she knows something about this, and Alfea says she knows that demons are really troublesome to handle. Unfortunately, just as she's about to lecture Touya on a thing or two about demons, the real culprit, who happens to be a Minotaurus demon, pops up behind them, hovering mid-air, recognizes Alfea to be one of the talkative elves he hates so much, and exchanges insulting words with her. Alfea, who doesn't give a rat's arse about dignity, gives him a taste of his medicine by insulting him as well, and then asking him if he's possessing the Minotaur's body he's using. When the demon says that it is, citing that the body is strong and durable enough to withstand its power to some degree, Touya demands that the demon return the body to its rightful owner. While the demon assures Touya that he's ready to do that, he does let him know that the fragile soul inhabiting the body previously is already shattered, meaning the body is already dead, just from the possession, and Alfea confirms the demon's claims by telling Touya that they can't undo the damage anymore. With Touya remaining silent the entire time, the demon yaps about this being the first meeting with a new magic swordsman, and then tells Touya that he's from the 9th floor. Hearing this, Touya asks the demon if it caused this incident, and the demon boldly claims to be the only one testing the waters by killing all those poor humans. Following that, he asks Touya to share his name as the new magic swordsman with him, and Touya tells the demon his full name. Satisfied with all the information he's gathered, the demon attacks Touya with a devastating beam of magical fire, but to nobody's surprise, Touya dodges the attack easily. Seeing this, the demon gets fully interested in the fight as he continues yapping and raining down magic attacks after magic attacks just to kill Touya. At one point, Touya transforms Dainsleif into a whip sword, just like he did with the 6th floor mutant monster, wounds the sword all around the demon, and slams the cow bastard to the ground so they can fight on the same level. Now pissed at the insolent human who just disrespected him, the demon unleashes a massive barrage of fire-themed magic attacks on Touya. But Touya, rather than block or deflect these attacks, just absorbs all the magical aura from the attacks like clockwork. When the demon calms down, he notices the Aura Eater skill at play here and calls Touya out for fighting like a coward. Well, thanks to the demon, Touya's gotten much stronger since he started the fight, and he lets the demon know that. Upon reverting Dainsleif to its original form, Touya attacks the demon multiple times, and this causes the demon to evolve into its final form. Before unleashing his strongest magic attack on Touya, the demon tells him that he's killed the magic swordsman many times before he turned them all into demons that he plays with occasionally. Upon hearing this, Touya wonders why the demon is saying all that nonsense when the previous magic swordsman allegedly died from his comrade's betrayal. To find out, he asks the demon if he was the one who betrayed the previous swordsman, but the demon totally refuses to answer his question, and instead promises to crush Touya with everything he's got now. With the stage set, the demon suspends itself back mid-air and tries to kill Touya in one big magic attack. To his dismay, however, Touya dodges the demon's ultimate attack and utterly destroys the proud demon in his next attack. Fortunately for him, the demon dies from this attack and leaves behind a valuable item. In the aftermath of the battle, Touya collapses from exhaustion, leaving Alfea to wonder wonder if an elf can be a magic swordsman. As she contemplates helping Touya, Althea figures that while it's true that if the magic sword has been passed down through generations, there might be a chance that the next cycle of the passing down will be someone from the elves. Fully convinced that an elf will be picked by Dainsleif next time, Althea picks Touya up and takes him to a safe spot to get him treated. Very early the following morning, Touya wakes up in a hospital on the 10th floor and greets Althea, who's right beside him, before asking if she was the one who healed him. After confirming that she did indeed heal him, Althea moves on to tell Touya that she got him some high-grade potions from the drops she got from some monsters she hunted and killed the previous night, and used the potions to heal him up. Upon hearing this, Dainsleif tells Touya that while Althea is telling the truth, he knows for a fact that she can only get such a strong potion on this floor because of the demon's presence, Moloch. To corroborate Dainsleif's point, Touya tells both his cursed sword and Althea that Moloch's appearance must have changed the quality of the dropped items. At the same time, Althea adds that there's a rumor that the tower evaluates the quality of the dropped items, which makes sense in the situation they're currently in. Once they get past that conversation, Touya bows his head, which surprises Althea for a second, and thanks her sincerely for rescuing him, watching over him, and healing his wounds. Knowing fully well that she doesn't deserve to be thanked, Althea tries getting Touya to raise his head, as she lets him know that she once reconsidered even helping him in the first place. Also, she tells him that she's only interested in his magic sword, so she really doesn't deserve to be thanked, irrespective of whether she deserves to be thanked or not. Touya still appreciates her for the help she rendered him, but even still, Althea tells him she'll be taking advantage of his kindness, and Touya didn't even care. Eventually, she stops talking about his kindness, and then asks Touya if he's going to continue climbing up the tower. Although Touya assures her that he'll continue climbing the tower, he does add that they need to find a possible survivor first, so they can ask them a few questions and try to figure out exactly how Moloch infiltrated the 10th floor. Since Althea has nothing left to do, she decides to tag along with Touya so he doesn't get lost. A few hours before dawn, Touya and Althea walk out of the hospital and return to the crime scene to continue their investigation. Along the line, Touya notices Althea using illumination magic to create some light balls, and gets intrigued by the simplicity of such a magic spell. When he asks what the basis of the balls is, Althea tells him that she's just converting aura into light, and then asks him how far they're going to go to search for the survivors. In response, Touya tells her what happens when humans die in the tower, and then calls humans temporal objects compared to buildings or tools in the tower. Just then, Althea notices one of her big white light balls peeking under a slab of debris, so she bends down to check it out. While checking the slab out, she tells Touya that if they're lucky, then they can find the equipment left behind by the corpses and consider them as dropped items. Unfortunately, when she finds nothing under the slab, she gets a little irritated and asks Touya if he's only searching for survivors as part of some weird sense of duty. Even though Touya claims not to have this so-called sense of duty, he does feel that since Moloch came after him, he feels some responsibility for indirectly causing the deaths of these poor humans. Upon hearing this, Althea gives him a light compliment, and Touya urges her to get some rest if she feels tired already. Althea politely refuses to back down just yet, as she promises to accompany Touya until he's satisfied with his search, and Touya happily welcomes her aboard. After searching the entire scene for one more hour, Touya and Althea finally give up on searching for survivors and stop to take a breather first before they continue their journey. While they're at it, Althea makes some comments about their opponent being really difficult, judging by how terrifying Bro was, even though he wasn't a fully fledged demon yet. And Touya, recalling that Moloch once said something about living on the 90th floor, asks Althea if she's ever gone there before. Surprised that he would even think that, Althea says no, and assures Touya that even she can't go that far. Well, since she happens to know a lot about the tower, Touya urges her to enlighten him on the hierarchy of the tower, and Althea tells him that the residents of the higher floors are known to sometimes interfere with matters on the lower levels. For example, while demons have been confirmed to live on the 90th floor and above, it is said that deities live starting from the 95th floor as well. Also, judging by what Moloch did, Althea is very sure that the demon will try again one more time to kill Touya. When Touya starts making big claims about defeating Moloch the next time he appears, Althea calls him out for talking like it's that easy to defeat a demon. Rather than indulge her in that sense, Touya instead asks her why the demons are after the magic sword so badly, and she tells him it's because the bozo, Moloch, somehow seems to think the next few masters of the magic sword will be demons if he can kill Touya. With Touya remaining quiet, she tells him how he proved himself worthy to be the successor of the magic sword, but still warns him to be very careful because she knows for sure that many creatures, demons, and monsters alike, claiming to know the strength and secret about the sword, will be coming for him soon. Having heard Althea's warnings, Touya smirks and tells her that he'll just need to get stronger in the meantime, so he can be prepared to welcome them when it's time. Following this, the duo ends their conversation and continues traveling up the tower. A few hours later, with them now traveling through a forest, Althea asks Touya if he's truly okay with moving on from the ghastly incident they just witnessed without even getting back to the association building and reporting the whole thing to his superiors, seeing as the demon was a Minotaur-type demon, and that the bastard annihilated everyone. When Touya says it's because they'll never believe that he defeated the demon, Althea stops guilt-tripping him and then moves on to ask him if he's happy that she's there with him. Just as he's about to answer her, Althea quickly claims that she's the reason why he didn't get lost on his trip up the tower floors, and Touya, realizing she's right, thanks her for the help. In due time, Althea notices the smug look on Touya's face and asks him what the matter island. In response, Touya tells her that he finds it odd that there are no monsters on that side of the 10th floor at all. At this point, Dainsleif and Althea, both of whom also attest to what Touya just said, confirm that something does feel off about that forest, almost as if something, or someone, is hunting down the monsters plaguing the forest. With this, Althea asks Touya if that certain someone he suspects is a human, but before he answers her, she tells him that if they are truly human, then it's possible that they survived the demonic onslaught, which is a good possibility. As Touya's about to continue talking, he suddenly hears a rustle in one of the shrubs nearby and instantly realizes that they're being watched by someone. At first, the duo thinks they're being watched by an enemy, but soon enough, the person watching them quickly reveals themselves to be 3 knightly elves, one of whom Althea recognizes and calls Beldia. Confused, Touya asks Althea if she knows the dude, and Althea tells him that Beldia is one of the knights of the elven world. When she turns to Beldia, asking him why he's there with them in the forest, Beldia throws a fit and complains about the ruckus she left back at the elven palace when she snuck out of the palace and left a very vague note behind. Knowing fully well that she's been caught, Althea gives a half-assed apology. But then again, Touya, who's disappointed, tells her to have at least told someone where she was going before leaving the palace, and Althea, in her defense, says she actually did. She then continues to say that she did leave a letter, telling anyone who found it that she's looking for the magic swordsman. But even this wasn't enough for Touya to understand her stupidity. Soon enough, Touya and his cursed sword figure, Althea, is a brat and a failure. But thankfully, before the spoiled princess causes a scene, Beldia quickly calls everyone back to order so they can return to the elven world on the 15th floor, as they have a big issue they need to solve. Hearing this, Althea urges Beldia not to worry about her running away this time, because now that she's found the magic swordsman, who she thinks would be able to help solve their problem, she is actually planning on returning home with him. Around this time, the other 2 guards behind Beldia, who've been standing like statues the entire time, finally speak up to acknowledge the famous magic swordsman the higher-ups have been talking about. Since Bro's still indebted to Althea, Touya offers to help if they need his input, and Beldia welcomes him aboard. Before they leave for the 15th floor, Beldia tells Touya a little bit about the trouble the elves are battling currently. Turns out, something strange started happening to the world tree around 4 days ago. Upon further investigation, the elves found a trace of high-ranking demon aura infecting the tree. The second Touya hears this, he instantly thinks of Moloch being the culprit and tells the elves that the bastard's probably the cause of this. Upon hearing this, Althea tells her knights about the form Moloch was possessing back when they saw and fought him, and then adds that the demon probably did something to the tree during the process of his descent. Even though Beldia knows of Moloch's existence as a high-ranking demon, he does tell the other 2 that a demon of that caliber can indeed affect the world tree. At that point, Touya asks Dainsleif if Beldia is right, and his sword provides him with more facts to prove Beldia's point, adding that a portion of a demon's power can materialize, an alter ego with its enormous aura to cause a disturbance to the world tree. Now that he understands the entire issue with the elves, Touya assures Althea, who asks if he'll help the elves, that he's ready to help them save the world tree. Having settled everything, Althea tells Touya that if he truly wants to help, then he should come with her to the 15th floor as soon as possible. And Touya, refusing to waste any more time, sprints across the forest with Althea and the other knights to get to the 15th floor as soon as possible. On their way to the 15th floor, Touya and his minions run into a horde of giant monster wasps, looking to attack and harvest their body parts for food, but Touya swiftly kills off a few of the annoying monsters with Dainsleif, after which they escape. As they continue sprinting, Touya asks Althea to explain how he can help the elves on the 15th floor, and the spoiled brat tells him that she's not even sure yet. With Touya super confused, Althea explains that she's known in the past that the previous magic swordsman helped them during the disturbance of the demons, so that's why she's sure that this time, Touya definitely is going to help them somehow. Just as she's about to continue her yap, Beldia stops them all so they can observe and fight the boss-level monster he just caught, and its vanguards. Before long, they quickly identify the biggest monster present as the boss-level monster, and Althea asks Touya if he can defeat the monster in an instant. Upon sizing the monster up, Touya assures her that he can take the monster down and instantly gets right down to action. In the meantime, the elven knights watching over the world tree begin to notice some form of advanced deterioration on it, and begin to fear the collapse of the world tree if Althea doesn't return soon with her so-called magic swordsman. While they await her return, Beldia, who feels useless for letting Touya and Althea take the lead on the charge against the monster, urges Althea to step back, so the knights can handle the pesky insect monsters. As Althea warns Beldia to concern himself with his safety first, the insect monsters launch their attack on Touya, the one with the cursed sword. Without even hesitating, Touya morphs Dainsleif's form into the awakened boot gear and leaps high up above the wasp monsters. Upon spotting the boss-level monster, which is also the leader of the swarm, Touya pounces on it at an amazing speed, which amuses Beldia himself, kills off a few of the boss's vanguards, clearing an attack path for Althea's magic, and faces the monster itself. Right before unleashing her magic attack, Beldia tells Touya to get out of the way, and Touya jumps up again. Thereafter, she conjures up a volcano ray, which is a devastating fire-themed special attack, and burns the boss-level wasp monster with it. As the monster writhes in pain, Touya gets back on the ground and finishes the monster with his cursed sword. In the aftermath of the attack, Touya compliments Althea's volcano ray magic attack from earlier, and wishes he could use magic in such a way, while Althea tries to explain the things he'd need to use magic like a pro, most of which include a wand. Beldia, who's seen firsthand just how strong Touya is, gets convinced that they might actually be able to save the world tree with Touya's assistance. With the boss-level wasp monster gone, Touya and the elves continue climbing the tower for hours on end until they eventually get to the world of elves on the 15th floor. Getting there, Touya stops to take in the amazing view of the tree houses the elves live in, and Althea, ever so spoiled, wastes no time in showing off the castle, which is the home where she and her father, the King of Elves, currently live. Soon after showing off her flashy castle, Althea points Touya in the direction of the world tree, and Touya, surprised by how far it is from the elven settlement, asks her why that's so. Well, Althea tells him that it's a measure to protect them, as elves, from being completely affected in case something happened to the world tree. Explaining further, Dainsleif tells Touya that if something happens to the world tree, the first people who are affected by the effects are the royalty and nobles, because the effects would cause a massive trouble for the royal family of elves. With no time to waste, Beldia interrupts Touya's quiet time with his cursed sword and urges him to follow him to the castle, so they can see the King of Elves, King Chariot. A few minutes later, Touya and Althea are presented before the King of Elves in his throne room. The moment King Chariot spots his daughter, he gets up from his throne and rushes towards her to hug and welcome her back to the kingdom. Unfortunately for him, Althea, who's super embarrassed to be treated like the kid that she is in front of the magic swordsman, completely rejects her father's embrace, and this embarrasses him. When Chariot tries to make a big deal out of it, Althea says she can't be acting all lovey-dovey with him when they have such an important guest there to see them. Realizing she's right, Chariot quickly comports himself and faces Touya. Soon after spotting his awakened gear, Chariot talks about how weird it is that the cursed sword didn't vanish. If anything, he knows that passing down the same awakened gear through generations can't be considered a normal thing, so there must be some truth to Touya being the magic swordsman after all. Hearing this, Touya asks the king how he knows so much about him, and Chariot tells him that the moment he became a magic swordsman, the tower responded to the change in ownership by doing something that a sensitive person should have noticed. When Touya asks him to explain what he meant by response, Chariot tells him that the response by the tower could be interpreted as a weak aura current, which is usually at a level that humans can't sense, and this explanation instantly helps Touya finally understand why Moloch, a demon who lives on the 9th floor, suddenly appeared on the 10th floor. Before long, the king asks his daughter if she can permit him to borrow Touya for a bit, and then takes him to a secluded spot in the palace to have a secret discussion with Touya. Getting there, Chariot apologizes for dragging Touya out of the throne room, and then says he did it because he didn't want to talk with him without his daughter being present. Once Touya asks what the talk is all about, Chariot changes his expression, which Touya notices, and says he wants to tell Touya about the worlds that exist inside the tower. Before he begins his explanation, Chariot asks Touya to tell him his experience on the 10th floor, and Touya says he knows it's a barren land where no one could be found during its first discovery. Satisfied with Touya's response, Chariot then asks what he thinks about the 15th floor, and he says he doesn't know what to think about it yet. At this point, Chariot figures he needs to explain the nature of the tower to Touya first, so he starts by telling the magic swordsman that the tower is a device that collects and preserves worlds. This means that the elves, the people of the 10th floor, as well as the other residents of the other floors of the tower, were all once residents of another world that was mysteriously absorbed by the tower, fueling it to grow higher. Currently, nobody knows how the tower began, can, but for all he knows, Chariot can say it was designed so that a resident there can only go down 10 levels from the floor they live on. That's the reason why the higher floors haven't destroyed the lower floors yet. With all that said, Touya asks Chariot if there's a possibility that the human world will also be absorbed into the tower as well. And while Chariot doesn't know if that'll happen soon or in a century, he does assure Touya that right now, the tower's testing the hierarchy of the human world, compared to the worlds currently inside it. According to history, humans made contact with the demons with the help of the magic swordsman. But once they lost the magic sword, the humans became weak, and this forced the tower to test the world and its race to redetermine their values. Right after hearing Chariot's explanation, Touya asks him if they can still stop the tower from absorbing Earth. But then Chariot says he's heard that one can get their answers once they conquer the tower. Before telling Touya the reality of things, he asks Touya what his current goal is as a magic swordsman. When Touya tells him he plans to conquer the tower, Chariot asks Touya if he can also help save the elven world by rescuing the world tree, even though it's not as grand as conquering the tower, and creating a friendly relationship with the elves by doing so. Before Touya gives his answer, he asks Chariot to explain what he means by saving the world, when the only issue they have right now is saving the world tree, and Chariot tells him that he said so because the foundation of the elven world is the world tree. Meaning, if the world tree is destroyed, then the elven world will come to an end, and all elves will die. To further prove his explanation, Chariot points to the red evil aura attached to the world tree and devouring it, and then asks Touya if he can also see it. After replying to Chariot's initial question, Touya asks him if that aura is the trace left by the demons, and he not only assures Touya that it is, but also adds that the red aura they're talking about is the parasite that consumes the life of the world tree. If they let it be, Chariot's pretty sure that the red demonic aura will suck the essence out of the world tree dry till it dies, which will be problematic for both the tower and the elves themselves. Also, since the aura is growing a little slowly, Chariot warns Touya that now's the best time to defeat it, even if the parasite was something that was planted by the high-ranking demons. Soon after telling Touya some things about him using his trump card, which is the magic swordsman, Chariot promises to tell Touya a method to make his magic sword much stronger, if he can help the elves save the world tree, and Touya, curious to find out what Chariot knows, finally agrees to help save the world tree. With all that said, Chariot dismisses Touya so he can rest and gather enough for the next day's mission in the guest room. Once inside the guest room, Touya asks Dainsleif if it's possible for Chariot to know the method that can make it much stronger, and although Dainsleif claims not to know if he's telling the truth, he does add that if Chariot knew its previous master, then there's a chance his words might be genuine. With this, Touya steals his resolve to take responsibility for the damage caused by that pesky Moloch demon, and urges Dainsleif to help him defeat the world tree parasite the next day. As soon as he's done preparing his mental self for the fight, Touya goes to sleep. Very early the following morning, King Chariot leads a small army of elven knights, including Touya, the magic swordsman, and his daughter, Althea, out of the kingdom to battle the parasite on the world tree and save it before it's too late. The moment they exit the gates, Chariot pauses the march and gives his soldiers a speech to make them ready for whatever they might face at the battle site. Amidst his speech, however, some soldiers notice the new magic swordsman, aka Touya, who's from outside the tower, standing by their side, and instantly feel that rush of encouragement from seeing someone strong siding with them. Once Chariot ends his speech with a battle cry, he orders his men to depart. And almost instantly, the march continues. Once they get to the parasitized world tree, Chariot orders his men to start cutting down all the parasitic vines from the world tree, and so the first squad charges forward. Before long, the parasite notices the threat close to it and extends its vines to take down some soldiers to protect itself. Thankfully, before the parasitic vines take down all the soldiers, Touya swoops in like the Flash and destroys the first wave of vines, attacking the soldiers in no time, while Althea stands as the mage in the group, keeping them safe from magic attacks. Having seen how impressive his strength is, the soldiers refuse to give up just yet, so they continue charging toward the parasite to defeat it with their numbers. Unfortunately for the army, a few minutes after Touya cuts the vines, they all regenerate. And both Touya and Althea notice this happening right in front of them. With this discovery, Althea tells her father, who's currently fighting off some vines, that they need to find the parasite's core and destroy it to totally kill it. Hearing this, King Chariot urges his daughter and army to give him a little more time so he can find the core. As he scans the area around them to find the core, Touya and Althea make sure to destroy all the vines approaching Chariot, with Althea complaining and whining about the sheer number of vines attacking at the same time. In due time, Chariot finds the core, or what he thinks is the core, and instantly attacks what appears to be a big orange eye popping out of the tree trunk, before relaying the information to Touya and Althea. Once he gets the core's location, Touya instantly charges at the spot through the path that the soldiers already cleared for him, and destroys the big orangish eye with his special boots. In the aftermath of the attack, Althea and the other elves, including her father, celebrate victory as they convince themselves that they've brought the demonic parasitic aura down. Amid the hubbub, Chariot pats Touya on the head, thanking him for keeping the peace within the elven community. But then Touya, figuring that he's already helped defeat the monsters, urges Chariot to fulfill his end of the deal by properly explaining the secret to make the magic sword stronger to him. Unfortunately for them, just as Chariot's about to explain everything, the big orange eye Touya destroyed earlier suddenly regenerates itself, shocking Althea herself, and stabs the king in the chest before anybody could react to the sneak attack. As Chariot stares at the hole in his chest, staggering, he tells Touya that they let their guard down too early, and that the first orange eye must have been a decoy, and then collapses in Touya's arms. Around this same time, Althea and the other guards run towards Chariot to help him up, but Touya, on the other hand, holds Chariot down carefully to protect him from further vine attacks till his people get to him. While Althea and the guard rush towards their king, the parasite tries to attack Chariot again. But thankfully, this time, Touya totally blocks the attack with his full body shield, causing an absurd reaction in the vine. Shortly after Touya blocks its attacks, the parasite randomly attacks some guards on the ground, causing Touya to believe that the core the king destroyed truly is a fake. Before long, the king jerks back awake in Touya's arms, tells him that the core was indeed a fake, and then adds that the real one lies somewhere else. To avoid worsening his injury, Touya urges the king to stop talking for now, land safely, and then instructs the guards nearby to take the king somewhere safe. Before he gets his injured arse carted out of the battle site, Chariot holds Touya and begs him to save them with the strength of the magic sword because he's their only hope. Hearing this, Touya tells the king to leave the parasite to him, and then rejoins the battle to begin his counterattack. Upon returning to the battlefield, Touya transforms Dainsleif's form into his big boy power boots, and tries one more time to destroy the big orange eye by stomping on it with the boots, just like he did the first time. When the orange eye obviously regrows itself, Touya, who's been hoping to figure out if there's a limit to the regeneration, eventually realizes that no matter how many times he destroys the orange eye, it'll always regenerate itself. With this, Touya reverts Dainsleif's core to the cursed sword's form and attacks multiple points on the parasitic vines, hoping to find the core and destroy it in one fell swoop. Soon after attacking a few spots and finding nothing, Bro pauses and continues figuring out another approach. Just then, Althea, who's noticed everything he's been doing, suddenly calls and tells him to hold on, so she can find the core using her magic. Once Touya tells her to go on, she sets up her makeshift magic scanner station and instantly starts scanning the entire parasite, hoping to find the core before the vine spots her. Not too long after she begins her search, the parasite spots and tries to kill her in her magic circle. To protect her, Beldia has a bunch of knights with shields surrounding Althea, so they can buy her enough time to figure out where the monster's core island. With the stage set, Touya tells Althea to continue scanning for the core, or cores, and Althea instantly continues doing her search. After a few more minutes of searching, she finally finds it, but, to her surprise, she does tell Touya that she can see multiple cores scattered all over random vine branches. With no time to waste, Touya just stops thinking and instead lets Althea do her thing. Soon after, she tells him she's found about 7 core sites, and then promises to guide Touya to where they are so he can destroy them immediately. Upon hearing this, Touya smirks and tells Althea to just point to where the bastards are so he can finish them all, and Althea instantly begins the mission. In just a matter of minutes, Touya and Althea work together to find and destroy every core site her scanners picked, and this makes Beldia, who's been watching by the sidelines the entire time, entirely shocked to see the true strength of the magic swordsman. Shortly after Touya destroys the cores, the parasitic vines start dropping and disintegrating. However, before Touya starts celebrating, he realizes that the vines are getting desperate, and soon discovers that the parasitic plant will keep sucking the world tree as much as it can before it falls off the world tree. As the parasitic plants grow much bigger, Althea suddenly realizes that the core she found wasn't the weak point of the tree at all. Instead, the real weak spot of the monster is the point where the parasite attaches to the world tree. As such, if they can destroy that spot, then she's pretty sure that the world tree will be saved. Before relaying the information to Touya, however, Althea stops to wonder why her father told her the previous night that they could defeat the parasite by defeating the core. With no response in sight, Althea just stares into nothingness, as she continues racking her brains to figure out why her father would put them all in so much danger like that.